So we were together talking the last time about diamonds or water, which one has more value. And several of you guys thought you were geniuses and said diamonds, and the rest of you thought you were geniuses and said water. And I'm a genius and said it depends on your situation. So, as economists have debated this, it comes down to intrinsic versus subjective value. So, intrinsic value is this: it's something is valuable because of its scarcity, the amount of labor or resources that went into the product. It has intrinsic value. Um, it means more. There was a particular amount of thought and human energy that went into this. Maybe it was resources that went into creating the product. Maybe it was valuable because there's just not much out there. Um, and an easy way to kind of think of intrinsic value is something like this. Um, Several years ago, I rented a Kia. Some of you guys might have a Kia car, KIA, the Kia kind. And no offense, but those cars just weren't very nice. And I've rented cars before, and I got in this Kia, and it was very plasticky, and it was really loud, and it wasn't comfortable. But when you were maybe looking at getting a new car, if you went to the car lot, you could probably get a Kia for a very reasonable price. Why? Well, because the amount of labor or resources that go into the product, or the how easy it is to get that type of car, just isn't that hard to it isn't that hard to get that type of car. And it's not like it doesn't have a super high-end engine. The trim is pretty basic, but there was one time I was able to rent a really nice Cadillac. Well, if that's the case, I rode in that Cadillac, and man, it was super nice. Oak trim, heated seats, heated steering wheel, just everything that you could possibly imagine. Well, most people cannot afford a Cadillac, and it's valuable because of its scarcity, the amount of labor that went into it or the resources that went into it. Um, you think about your Chromebooks. We're not giving you guys a super high-end Chromebook. It's pretty easy to get those. And it does have intrinsic value, but not a high intrinsic value, because the amount of labor or resources that go into the product are pretty basic as far as it goes. That's intrinsic value. Now, you have subjective value. This is the idea that the value of a product depends on its usefulness to the buyer. Now, let me think of a good example here for you guys. Um, if I was to get a hair straightener, maybe you guys got me a hair straightener for Christmas, that would be of little subjective value to me. But if one of you girls got a hair straightener, it might be more valuable to you than it would be to me. Matter of fact, I guarantee it would be, unless I gave the gift to my wife. See, the idea is the product depends on its usefulness to the buyer. We know that Bobby likes working on cars, and so does Seth. I think Seth, hopefully you're still listening to these lectures. I sometimes get worried that you're not, but hopefully you are. But you guys like working on your cars, and if you were to get tools to fix your car, that would be of value to you. But if I got a girl in the class who doesn't really ever work on cars, doesn't really care to work on cars, her dad doesn't care to work on cars, nobody in their house works on cars, then me getting them, a socket set or wrenches or whatever, new brake pads, it just wouldn't mean as much to you. If I got somebody a gift card to AutoZone that didn't really care about cars, would they get some value out of it? Yeah, they might, but not as much as Bobby or Seth or somebody that really likes to work on cars would get. And so that's the idea of subjective value. It depends on its usefulness to the buyer. A soccer coaching book would be of way more value to me than it would be to Abby Mulligan, because she doesn't play soccer. And so if somebody got me a new set of drawing pens or ink pens or something along those lines, then that wouldn't really benefit me because I don't know how to draw, but Abby would be really fired up about that. Carl Menger was the economist that was behind this idea that said that there's two different types of values, intrinsic and subjective value. and that the idea that the value of a product depends on its usefulness to the actual buyer, Carl Menger. You need to associate him with this idea. Util or utilities. It's kind of a weird word, util, but what they're talking about, economists here, is the usefulness of a product or a choice to someone, an imaginary unit of satisfaction. So when you see the word util moving forward, you need to go ahead and picture it being something of usefulness, something that is profitable to you, something that's profitable to someone else. And so that's what we're going to measure things, utils of satisfaction. Almost think of it like that. And yes, that is a real word. It is something that the economists actually do talk about, utils or usefulness of a product or a choice to someone. So let's talk about opportunity benefit versus opportunity cost. Opportunity benefit is satisfaction, meaning the choice, the satisfaction a person receives from a decision they make. When you make a decision, whatever that decision may be, there's a level of satisfaction that you chose what you wanted. And so let's say you want to go to the park and you have it ranked utils 0 to 10. You going to the park might be a 9. And so therefore you have 9 utils of satisfaction, meaning you are pleased and satisfied with the decision that you made. Opportunity cost is regret. That's the satisfaction one gives up by choosing what was second best. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why would I ever choose what is second best? Well, there's various reasons why somebody could actually choose what is second best. It could be because what is second best might be cheaper, and so you might not have much of a choice. Maybe you really want to go to Culver's, but Culver's is a little bit more expensive than McDonald's, so you choose McDonald's, and you're still satisfied with McDonald's, but not as much as you were with if you would have chosen Culver's. And so that's why we call it opportunity cost or regret, and that is the satisfaction one gives up by choosing what was second best. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to close this window out, and I'm going to show you a little chart. You'll need to write this chart out, and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. But again, think opportunity benefit versus opportunity costs. So let's close this out, and let's go over here. And this is the way that your chart would be set up. What you would do is you'd label opportunity benefit, which means satisfaction, just like we showed you over here. Okay, opportunity benefit, which is satisfaction, and then opportunity cost. Opportunity benefit minus opportunity cost equals your utils. And so let's say that you were going to have $25 to the movies. We'll just go ahead and put that in there, $25 to the movies and $25 to Amazon. And again, I'm just guessing here, but let's say that $25 to the movies, you'd get a satisfaction of 8 out of that. $25 to Amazon, you'd have a satisfaction of 7. Of 7 to that. Now, 8 minus 7 is 1, and 7 minus 8 is minus 1. So in this case, what would you pick in theory? Well, in theory, you would pick this one. You would pick the movie ticket because to you, the movie ticket would be of more benefit to you, be more satisfaction. Now, you might be like, do we have to do this chart in our, like all the time? I do want you to know how to do this chart. This is the opportunity benefit versus opportunity cost chart. And again, make sure you know the benefit is satisfaction, cost is regret. And so the question becomes, again, do we do this in our head? Yes. And why would we choose what is second best? Well, you might think practically. See, I love going to the movies, but right now Amazon would probably benefit me more, so maybe I should switch this. But this is what our mind does every time we weigh options when it comes down to figuring out the different types of cost and the different types of benefit and different types of cost. And again, notice your utils, this is your total satisfaction. So we would do this chart. We could do this with practically anything. You could, move this out. Let's see here. And you could go, you could say Culver's, Culver's, and then you could say McDonald's, whatever you would want to, do there. You could do either one, and that's how your mind would do it. But again, a lot of it depends on the usefulness to the buyer. So there is subjective value that does go along with this as well. All right. right, so let's move on. Two more things here, two terms that you need to know. Microeconomics, choices made by individuals, households, and businesses. That is everyday individuals, households, and businesses, like people buying stuff at Sam's Club, people buying stuff at Meijer, Spartan stores, VGs, whatever. Those are people that are making those type of choices. Those are small scale choices. And when you guys get to college, if you studied economics, you'd take two different courses, micro and macro. Macro would be choices made on a larger scale, like countries with tariffs and exporting and importing, and large scale global trade. Microeconomics would be just decisions that you and I make as a family. And again, for the most part, you got to think of it like this: you and I are hardly ever going to make macroeconomic decisions unless you go into like a very large scale business. This would be like our governments. This would be our large corporations. And they could dip into microeconomics, but for the most part, macro is very large scale. That is chapter 1. I told you guys chapter 1 would not be very long, and hopefully that will kind of explain stuff as usual. If you guys have any questions, by all means, let me know.